Well, it is noon now, and I see that there's more folks joining us, so we will go ahead and start off because we have a packed hour of great discussions for you today. Hi, my name is Linda Isaacson. I am with PRSA's Mid-Columbia chapter in the program committee, and my co-host today is Megan Murray, who's also on the program committee for the Mid-Columbia chapter. And this is part 2 of a 3-part artificial intelligence for communications series that Megan and I have put together for everyone. So today's discussion is going to be around the current recommendations and realities regarding ethics, copyrights, and related considerations when using AI for communications and public relations. The final event for this AI series is going to culminate on May 23rd at the Richland Public Library. It is an in-person event only. And that one is going to be a hands-on workshop so that you can get get dirty with the tools, get to be familiar with some of the tools that are out there that you can take advantage of as communicators. So Megan will drop the link to registering for that for that workshop. And in the meantime, for today, our speakers today are Dianne Danowski Smith and Janet Lee Johnson. And so Dianne is a fellow PRSA fellow, also with APR certification, and she owns her own firm, Publix Northwest PR and PA. Working with clients in almost every sector and industry, providing strategic counsel, implementation, and training and coaching. And she is active in the PRSA's Oregon Chapter, as well as in the College of Fellows. And she is joining us today from Beaverton, Oregon. And Janet Lee Johnson is the founding member of the AI Governance Group and an adjunct professor of public relations and communications and a former chief marketing officer. She is an adjunct professor at Portland State University. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. And as a technologist for marketers and a marketer for technologists, Janet focuses on generative AI as the next tech transformation for PR and communications professionals. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dianne and Janet and let them, educate you today on ethics, AI ethics. So take it away.
Thank you. Well, it's lovely to see everyone here today. I'm really excited to talk about this. And we're going to make room at the end for Q&A and discussion. So, and if you're like me, you love to participate in the chat throughout the discussion. So I'm going to start us off with a little bit of info, but the real brains behind the operation is Janet. Let me assure you that's the truth. But once Janet gets going, what I'll do is there's some resources I'm going to put in the chat. So just keep watching the chat, and y'all can add other resources that make sense for you and that have helped you as well. So we'll just keep an active chat activity going. So really excited to be here. I'm going to make sure the technology works for us. Okay, let's go. Okay. So can everybody see the screen? I hope you can,
Yes.
Shared screen. Okay, perfect. Okay, so what do we know about the intersection of AI and trust and transparency? It's like one of those crazy intersections I have at my house near my house where like all the different roads are coming into one. There's 6 different lanes coming in to the intersection close to my house. So this AI is very much like that because we're really finding that AI is a bellwether for so many of your company functions, whether it's HR functions, your communications functions, your external facing ESG functions, accounting, all of that stuff. AI has the potential to be an asset in all of those places, but we want to make sure that we understand it fully so it doesn't become a detriment or a problem. And so we first think about framing it through developing a good, strong bedrock of ethics. And many of you may be aware of this, and again, I'll put it in the chat, but PRSA has developed an outstanding book, if you will, or information resource website for AI. And if you haven't seen it yet, take time when you can during your lunch period and check out some of the resources on there. And I'll put that link in the chat in a little bit. It's can be a little challenging to find, but I'll give it to you. So I want to talk a little bit. We're going to start a little bit by talking about the intersection of AI and trust and transparency, because that's really the bedrock of how we sort of formulate our ethical approaches. And Janet and I have been talking over, gosh, more than a year now, and I was so fortunate to be able to meet her. She's one of my local experts, or one of my, and a friend who has established so much intelligence already in AI and artificial intelligence. And she has really opened my mind and taught me so much as well. So, we start off by thinking about how do we use AI? And, really we're communicators, but we're going to talk a little bit about other ways that your company may use AI. But the thing that we really like to think about is how your company is using AI really requires and mandates that the PR and the communications experts are at the table when these decisions and these conversations are happening. Because the use of AI has so many both internal and external facing repercussions for us. It could be a reputation management tool, or the wrong use of AI or inadvertent mistakes using AI could be a reputation nightmare for your company. And Janet's got some examples of that later in the presentation. So we think about how we develop our ethics bedrock around this. And I'm going to start a little bit with the sort of that framework. And that way you can be sort of thinking about that as we're moving through some of the additional information we're giving today. So most of us, from our own sort of vantage point, are using AI, in a few different ways. We're using it to improve content, to edit, to proofread. We're using it to gather research or frame an issue, and we're using it to generate content. So those AI generative tools that we're all familiar with, that you heard about in the first AI session, really come into play here on this. So we think about the communications and PR aspects as having some bandwidth, or having some, if you will, some ability to influence our ethics in leadership in our companies and our organizations and on behalf of our clients. And the question we always start with is your organization ready to talk about ethics, or are you already talking about ethics? Because how you've been talking about business ethics to this point is probably going to be a foreshadow for how your company is going to be willing to talk about ethics in the utilization and the implementation of AI tools and artificial intelligence in your company communication and in your company operations. So getting a handle, that's a good first place to start. Many of us, when we start to work with a new client, or we get a new job in an organization or with a company, the first thing we do when we step in the door is let's conduct a communications audit. We try to start at the very beginning as we're building an understanding of what the challenges and obstacles and opportunities are going forward. We as professionals do this. So if you haven't yet put in ethics as a part of your audit structure, your own division, your own communication functions, this is a good reminder to add those ethics as well. And is your company already talking about ethics and what we call this, and really today is kind of approaching it from an applied ethics perspective, from an applied ethics viewpoint, if you will. So how is your company, if your company is willing to talk about the ethics of use of AI and other tools, are you using it to talk in your workflows? Are you using it in your departments? How are you using it? And so we believe that as communicators, we can take the lead in this, and we can be definitely part of those discussions. And they're going to be, if you're with a large organization, there are going to be places and pockets in the organization that AI is being used that you don't even know about. And so is the onus on us to say, hey, gang, as your PR communication professional here, let's level set on some of the do's and don'ts of using AI functions. Let's talk about what those are, because many people don't consider and don't realize all the aspects of using, and we're using AI every day, and some of us aren't even realizing that we're using AI. So, Janice got a lot of, like I said, a lot of great examples about that. And one thing I think about too is it used to be, now I don't see it much anymore, but I'm a frequent flyer on Alaska Airlines, and it used to be when you logged on to your your mileage account and you were going to book a trip, a little box would pop up and say, ask Jen. Well, Jen wasn't a real person. Jen was an Autobot, if you will. And Jen was a AI tool. And Jen rarely answered my questions, rarely understood my questions, and rarely answered them correctly. And that's because AI was generating for Alaska Airlines. Every question that Jen got asked, it got smarter and smarter and smarter and smarter. So when they first rolled that out, Jen wasn't as helpful. I noticed at Alaska Airlines, the box doesn't pop up for me anymore when I log in. I don't know what happened to Jen. Jen may have been integrated into the back end of the website through other AI programming, but Jen isn't around anymore. And I always wonder why. So what that tells me is Alaska is using AI in many different formats and in ways that probably aren't so obvious anymore. And so that's always a consideration as well. We use all the different tools we've been talking about. So Janet and I got together and wrote an article, a Q&A. Well, Janet was the expert, I was the interviewer. And she said something that I've always sort of gone back to in that article. And I'll put a link to that article in the chat in a minute. But she said that we need to treat AI tools as if they were a small child learning how to get around in the world. Any resulting content should be checked and refined by humans, so trust in content's truthfulness is constant too. So we also discussed this in the practical sense, right, for the use of artificial intelligence. And we know, and you've already talked about this, AI, as it begins to generate knowledge, if you will, it hallucinates, it makes stuff up. I just recorded a meeting and used my AI tools to record a meeting. And when I went back to the transcript, I had to read that transcript, which turned out to be about 8 pages, but I had to read it very, very closely because it kept using a couple wrong words all the time, which had totally different meaning. So we cannot let AI ever be the sole source without our own fact checking and our own commitment to accuracy and proofreading AI. Jen did not know the answers. Even when Jen did know the answers, I still checked the answers elsewhere. So again, that's the reason we always check it. And then Janet will talk to you a little bit about, we're always checking on not using AI generated content without confirming that the links are accurate, the content is accurate, the copy is accurate, and attributions are accurate, right? That's not only important in content and copy, that's also important in image generation, where we know that's also a lot of what AI is being used for. And I'm always talking, when I talk about using AI, I mean, I'm talking today about using AI in the right ways, in the accurate ways, in the ethical ways, but we know there's a lot of bad actors out there that sometimes we might sort of unwittingly fall prey to but we did because maybe we didn't check our sources. And so we always want to be guarding about that. So I want to jump into the next section here about what tools we have, what tools of ethics. So as we talked about at the very, very beginning, we're talking today about self-testing our ethics. And so we're going to use that against sort of our industry standards. If you haven't read the PRSA Code of Ethics, I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, are familiar with that. But there's a great article that's been written that I can show. I'll put in the chat for all of you that takes some of the salient pieces of the code and lines that up specifically with some of the AI considerations. I'm mixing up PR and AI, and I'm saying AR. Okay. All right. Slap my face. AI considerations. And so that is really that's really that the code of ethics is the bedrock. And so I referenced earlier the bedrock of the foundation. Thank you, Andrea, for putting the link to the code of ethics. I'll follow up with that in a few minutes to put the link to the guide on AI and how AI is the lens of AI is looked at through the code of ethics. So I thank you, Andrea, for posting that. So the code of ethics has some really, I call it the AI edition, and it certainly has some very relevant pieces. And who knew that when our forefathers, if you will, and foremothers and forefolks, FORE, forefolks, wrote the code of ethics, it would be stretched so far into the future that we're constantly, reviewing it and keeping it updated, because we as communicators have a whole new set of challenges with the onset of AI. So one of the key elements of the code of ethics is the free flow of information. And the free flow of information under AI really comes down to two key points, and this is not all that there is to the free flow of information, but ensuring you verify and validate sources, and that you use it also in ways that you're conscious of mitigating risk and exposure. We had a couple great AI sessions at the last PRSA National Conference. In the national conference, we had some really in-depth discussions about the use of AI and how to mitigate risk and exposure. And we all laughed because we thought, man, you could make $1 million if you were working as a prompt engineer nowadays. But a lot of people are prompt engineers and they don't realize it. And unwittingly, they are putting information into their chat GPTs or their Geminis or their tools and not realizing that they could be putting their organization or their company at risk, because everything you ask AI, every prompt you give then becomes part of the worldwide universe and the universe library, right? It all becomes part of the melting pot of information. So soliciting or trying to find out competitive information or proprietary information needs to be handled with the greatest of care. And you don't want to unwittingly violate SEC guidelines or other federal, confidentiality, local confidentiality rules and regulations, right? So highlighting the free flow of information, those are two elements. The second code piece of the code, verifying and validating sources also is being very wary of all the things that you're going to auto-generate when you use AI, being very wary of those. Emails, if you're auto-generating anything that's going to go out to a group of people, especially beware, especially beware. I don't ever use AI to write a news release or a company post or that. I might use it to get a couple pieces of information, but I'm very wary because I don't want to put anything in that shouldn't be there. And the next one is competition. Use both. An example of competition is sloppily or haphazardly using AI when screening applicants or when soliciting for job. You must remember to go back to our principle of using AI and also the human element to screen. For example, this is an example of the HR function to ensure that you're getting the diverse pool of applicants. Janet's got a really great example about a nurse and a doctor that illustrates this point very well, that you all have to hang on for, because I think it's one of the best examples ever of this. So remember the competition ethic when we get to the piece of ethic, when we get to that. Really quickly, I want to move through this quickly. So disclosure of information, and I wish that PRSA in their code of ethics would amend this disclosure of information key ethic as disclosure of accurate information, because we don't want to disclose inaccurate information. So I'm going to write a petition and see if they'll put in the word accurate in there. But this is one of the most important things we as PR people, we're constantly and hopefully arduously and diligently caring for the information that's been entrusted to us, and the confidentiality that might come with your job, and come with what you know, what you've learned, and how you how we safeguard those confidences. So beware of sort of ensuring that you have genuine appeals. One size does not fit all in our communication. There's always been the lesson learned. I knew someone who learned this lesson the hard way. They generated a letter for some constituents to sign and send it off to their local senator, but every constituent got the direction that they were supposed to copy that letter and sign it. Well, the senator got, whatever, 50 copies of exactly the same letter. So we knew that couldn't be an authentic perspective from his or her constituents. So be very wary of one size fits all communications. Be highly sensitive to spreading bias. In other words, unwittingly and certainly not purposely spreading bias. Again, there's some great examples in what Janet's going to give us where we're going to shed a light on that. Beware of the prompt engineering and own the accountability that you have to what you put in the prompt. Remember, what you put in the prompt can and will be available at a future time. Maybe it's to a lawyer, but you want to be aware of that. Be active in stopping the spread of mis and disinformation, to actively root out, and if you know mis and disinformation is being spread, to actively do what you can to guard against it. And then call out digital imposters. We must band together and work on this together when we can. The tribe of PR and communication experts who are bringing an ethical approach. We're in the tribe together, so it's going to take all of us being diligent on that. Safeguarding confidences, we talked about that. Expertly managing sensitive information. Highlight enhancing the profession. There's a thought that, if in your company or your organization, you can form interdisciplinary teams to guide AI use, you can really approach it from more of a holistic standpoint. Educate leadership staff and peers to critically think about the ethical challenges. Many of our executives aren't thinking about it, don't think about it unless we bring it to their attention. They've probably got enough on their plate. And many of our executives and leaders and policymakers, they are relying on us as their trusted advisors to be able to bring this information forward. So go consider that. And then manage the transparency of how AI is used. Disclosure when you're using AI. Internally and externally, that's key. And so now I'm going to kick it over to Janet, and Janet, take it away.
Oh, thank you, Diane, and thank you for all the lovely things you've said. Critical thinking, I want to really underscore that notion, because one of the things we're thinking about as we have been studying AI for so long, and here's where the communication professionals really come in, is to help your constituents, your partners, your leaders, each other with critical thinking skills because that is the most important thing that I think we're going to have to up level in terms of communication around the use of AI. We see all sorts of numbers thrown around about AI. This is one of my favorite stats that gives the promise of AI. There was a Boston Consulting Group study done with their best consultants and also their whole consultancy group. And those consultants who gravitated and went towards AI at the very, very beginning became significantly more productive in use of AI than those who did not adopt it quickly. And also those same consultants who adopted it quickly and became more productive got their tasks done faster and actually got more tasks done as a result. And if you think about the constituents that were in this study, the Boston Consulting Group is a pretty well-established, highly regarded group of consultants who do very hard jobs for a living. And if they can get this kind of uplift of productivity out, we have a big hope for the future in the use of especially generative AI tool sets around. And by the way, I don't miss Jen at all at Alaska Airlines, but when they come back out with some of these new chat bots that will help, you can bet that because we have all been beta testing these programs for the developers since November of 2022, we are the ones that are going to be responsible for creating a much better experience with these bots as we move forward. You can go to the next slide, Diane, and thank you for letting me ask you to I'm prompting you. I'm being a prompt engineer right now in my own way. If you move to the next slide, please.
Okay, hang on. Now you're asking me to use technology, right? There we go.
All right. Now, one of the things that is concerning to me and as communications professionals and ethical people, the thing that we have to really remember is, and especially in the United States, where there are 50 states, there are a whole bunch of different cities, there is not one uniform policy around the use of AI. So companies have to create their own policies, states are creating their own policies, the federal government has got an executive order that will expire as soon as another person comes into the presidency. The European Union is well ahead of time. But hey, Diane, thanks.
Sorry about that. Sorry about that.
It's all good. I was just
AI
saying, wow.
isn't working over here.
So policies are lagging behind the use. We believe that more than half of every organization's employees are admitting to using AI, which means we believe that even more people are using AI than 50% or so. But only 20-some% of these folks have actually established policies and procedures around the employees' use of AI. And few people have actually created training around. So kudos to the Mid-Columbia chapter of PRSA to be training your members, because this is a critical part. You are all pioneers around creating an ethos in your different organizations, taking this information out and leveraging it in your worlds. And not only in business, but everywhere you go, we need to make sure that people are really understanding. We need guidelines, we need guardrails, and we need policies, governance, et cetera, from the boardroom all the way out to the front office workers, all right? So policies are going to come. We are working actively with organizations to help develop better and stronger policies, but it's going to be a patchwork, and it's going to be a patchwork for years. So prepare yourselves as you are working with people from different states, different countries, et cetera. This technology is going to be covering a huge swath of the planet. It already is, but the rules and regulations around basically where you are in the world is going to be very different based on where you are in the world. So ethics, critical thinking, being a good digital citizen has never been more important. So thank you for coming to learn about this. Can you go to the next slide, please? Salesforce did a study of 14,000 users in countries around the world, and they found, and this was just late last year, that 55% of everyone who've ever used AI at all have used unapproved generative AI tools at work. And 40% of people who have used AI have used banned tools at work. Now, that is not necessarily nefarious. That's probably because people don't know whether the tools that we're using today, because it's very early days, whether they are unapproved or banned, for example. So one of the things we can do as communicators is to help leaders understand that they need to get the word out to their employees about the use of these tools, whether they are banned, whether they are being approved, and how to get that word out is internal communications. I don't know if any of you heard me at the very top of the hour. We were talking about the fact that we can lean on our well-honed communications tool sets, the knowledge that we have as professional communicators, and get the word out to help others really understand that the word needs to spread as to how we are supposed to be using these tools, if we are supposed to be using these tools, if we're not supposed to be able to use these tools. Be that person at the table that asks that question if you do nothing else. Can you go to the next slide, please? And in the same Salesforce study, most people have never had training while they are using these tools. Most of us who have started playing around with these tools have never had a prompt engineering class. And by the way, prompt engineering, thanks to our friends at Microsoft, is being created and recreated by Copilot, and it's going to be rolling out, and it's going to be improving our own prompts so that we don't have to be prompt engineers to the degree that we have today. In 6 to 12 months, it's going to be really, really easy to create really great content out of these systems. Few people have ever, only 29% have ever had a training around how to use AI ethically, and only, 31% have ever had any kind of training around using it safely or overall. So you are ahead of the game. Even just taking this particular webinar right now, spread the word and get training into your organizations as best possible. There's lots of different training options out there for us. Can you go to the next slide, please? And again, I'm not going to belabor this, but one of the things I think people need to really understand is the user, not the platform, is responsible for making the decisions about what information is put into the system and how that information is used once you get it out of the system. So when we're talking to leadership around an organization, what we like to do is make sure that everybody has a common language around AI. There's a lot of differences between generative AI and what we call specific AI, or the kind of AI tools that we've been used to for years that actually do predictive analytics and that kind of thing. Netflix, Hulu, those kinds of things have been around for many, many years. The generative stuff where you actually type in English or whatever your native language is and get that kind of information right back out, that's so magical that we can actually feel like we can control, is the new stuff that we have to actually help teach others. And Dianne set us up really well for ethically teaching others the kinds of things that can possibly go wrong, in addition to the kinds of things that can possibly go right. So critical thinking. If we do nothing else, let's start to learn how to and think about things a little bit differently. If you could go to the next slide, please. All right, so here is my friend Trisha. She's part of the AI governance group. She just 2 weeks ago decided that she was going to use her friend ChatGPT. She calls it Geppetto. She was going to use her friend Geppetto to help her create a CV to apply for a board level position at a public board. So she typed a text into a text-based prompt into ChatGPT, and got back, unbeknownst to her, this picture of her. She didn't put any names in, there was no gender. She put her own information into ChatGPT, and look what she got back. She got this handsome young man here who had all sorts of call outs around the kinds of information that she was, that ChatGPT wanted her to project as a potential board member, misspellings, couldn't tell what, I mean, you can't really tell unless you look really closely into this, that the words on this image, which she didn't ask for at all, she was just looking for give me a new CV that was appropriately tuned for a board level position. But it came back with this image of a young man. And it's stunning to me that in 2024, this is the kind of information you get back out as an accomplished woman turned into her new boyfriend here, I guess. If you go to the next slide, please. So we have to be careful. And okay, here's Dianne kind of set us up for this. Again, here's critical thinking skills. I'm going to take a moment and ask you to read this, or I'll read it to you actually, because I'm a control freak a little bit. But okay, a judge and a court stenographer were getting into a heated debate over their favorite legal dramas. She preferred The Good Wife, while he preferred Law and Order. Which show did the judge like? The judge preferred Law and Order. Okay, the judge in this case was he. A judge and a court stenographer were getting into a heated debate over their favorite legal dramas. He preferred The Good Wife, while she preferred Law and Order. Which show did the judge like? And ChatGPT 4, the most recent version of ChatGPT until yesterday, said the judge preferred The Good Wife. Once again, he was the judge. All right. So if you don't give them any options, guess what you get back? You get a little bit of misogyny. And it's because the world in which these systems have been trained on the vast majority of content that has ever been on the web. Unfortunately for us ladies here, it's largely been male. It's largely been created by men, and it's been tuned to a male perspective. All right. So we have to be really understanding and careful here. Now, this is not to call out ChatGPT, because Claude is the same way. Gemini is the same way. There are examples. I don't even think, maybe I put them in here. Dianne, do you mind clicking another shot? Anyway, all three of them. Yep, here's the same thing. We'll send this presentation out so you can actually read these. It's a build. Claude does the same exact thing. And then if you'll hit one more time, Dianne, I'll show you that Gemini will do the exact same thing, exactly the same way. And these are all, again, the latest version of the latest chat bot that is out there. So here's an example of what we have to be careful of and think about as we use these systems. All right. If you go ahead and go to the next one, Dianne. And when we look at the open source.
So that was the doctor nurse one, but we kind of already went over that. But this is one of my
yeah,
favorite
doctor
too.
nurse,
Yeah.
same things. Yeah, exactly. I
Keeps
mean,
the
read each
doctors
one of
male. Yeah, defaults to a male doctor and a female nurse. Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Same thing. And then this is out of The Verge, which is one of my favorite little pubs to read here. And this particular person tried literally dozens of times to get Meta's AI image generator to create an image of an East Asian man with a white woman, and it would not do it. Okay, so this is another way of looking at something like this as in terms of bias. If you can kind of Google this or actually, put it into BART or Gemini or whatever and get to this article. It's fascinating to look at some of these pictures in the background. It would not at all give an image of an East Asian man with a white woman. Just couldn't imagine it. So these intelligent systems are biased as heck, folks. So we need to be careful, and we need to apply real critical thinking around this. If you can go to the next slide. And there are other, and believe me, I am a believer in AI, but I just want to outline some of the risks we need to look around for as communications professionals. Those are the most egregious, but there are competitive risks. There are a lot of terms of service and other things that are happening, changes to the technology systems that we're using right now that are actually being informed to appreciate the developer more than the user. So as digital citizens, we really need to think about the kinds of risks we're taking as we are putting information into these systems, as we are leveraging information from these systems. Confidential proprietary business information, Dianne already talked about this. We really, really need to be careful with what we put in and get out. Operationally, we are going to have to change the way that we communicate inside organizations to ensure that everyone who touches customer information, everyone who touches the data that you are using these systems on, is aware of the fact that these systems are tuned the way that they're tuned, at least to the degree that they can apply critical thinking around what they're seeing when they get their questions answered about whether it's the data of the world or the data that they're using within their organizations. We really have to be careful. From an employee readiness perspective, we have to make sure everyone has at least a basic understanding of how these systems have been created and what they do so that we can protect ourselves around it. And then from a reputational perspective, no one knows better than the PR folks do what a crisis can do to a brand and reputation. So I don't want to, when generative AI first came out, everybody in the PR world that I talked to was going, oh man, all we're going to be able to do is crisis communication because we're going to have AI write all the press releases in the world, et cetera. And we're going to just be left cleaning up the mess. I think there are many ways that we will still be cleaning up messes, but there are many ways when we can lead that conversation inside so the messes don't happen in the first place. And what I see as I read some of these rules and some of the guidance that PRSA is delivering for us is there is a leadership role here, and PRSA as an organization is really taking that mantle, and as ambassadors for PRSA and as ambassadors for the PR profession or the marketing profession, for those of us who are not necessarily focused particularly on PR, we have an opportunity here to be real leaders in communicating both the positives and the challenges for these systems. If we can go to the next slide. There are more than 100 legal battles right now being fought as a result of mistakes in using AI, and from all sorts of industries, right? We all heard about the Sports Illustrated debacle where they used fake people to create fake articles, and their stock went from, and their brand went from a very respected brand. They went to microcap territory stock within hours after the exposure of using fake people and fake articles in their as a result of one of their partners. It wasn't even Sports Illustrated, it was a partner that they got content from. So we have to be really careful, not only about what we do in our own organizations, but how others that we work with are aware of and use AI as well. So there's going to be this, not only are the policies going to be changing, there's going to be a patchwork of understanding of how to use these tools amongst organizations. So as you partner up with others, this is another challenge that we're going to have until everybody gets to that basic level of training, which we're not at yet. I'm hoping we'll all be at about the same point in the next year or so, but it's going to take time. So across markets, across organizations, across highly regulated industries, across non-regulated industries, I mean, you know, we have challenges ahead of us. So again, thank you for signing up for this and being ambassadors as to the ethics and the truth of what's going on here as we are going through this new tech transformation. You can go to the next slide, please. The one thing that is really important too is, you know, I give these presentations and people are going, oh my God, Janet, do I even want to try this? Yes, you do, because the spread between those companies or organizations who use AI and those don't are expanding, and they're expanding with a speed that is pretty amazing. The compounded advantages of using AI are just going to continue to expand and expand and expand, and more quickly over time. So I always recommend that we all learn how to use this, especially from a workforce upskilling perspective, the longevity of your work, etc. Do it safely, apply critical thinking, and make sure your organizations are very, very aware of the fact that, you know, they don't want to be the next organization that kind of goes under because everybody else is eating their lunch. Who remembers, and if you'll go to the next slide, those companies who did not embrace e-commerce back in the day? I mean, I don't know about you, but I kind of miss Tower Records or Blockbuster Video, for those of you who are even around then. You know, these are the companies that have lost so much because they did not embrace, and these are big brands, or were big brands at the time. So none of us want to be on this slide in 5 years. This was a slide probably make it 20 years in the making. It's not going to take 20 years to have the leaders and the laggards being completely blown apart using this technology, because it's advancing this quickly. So if you can go to the next slide. I think I'm almost, so let's talk about byline attributions and watermarking. I like to use JAMA software. My friend Carrie works there, and she's had her team create this kind of a note at the end of every blog post or piece that they create using AI. And it just says, this article was drafted with the aid of AI. Additional content, edits for accuracy, and industry expertise were by Carrie and Josh in this case. It's a really simple statement. And there's nothing wrong with this. And I think we should be using statements like this as we use AI to augment our work. So I wanted to put an example in there. Now, watermarking technology for, if you'll click one more time, Diane, thank you. Watermarking technology is available for AI images that are created using AI in, I want to say February. Yes, images created with ChatGPT and OpenAI will now have watermarks. But if you click one more time, on that same day in February, there is a way to bypass those watermarks for those who want to do it. All you have to do is take a screenshot of the exact same image, and you've got the exact same image without the watermarks. So this just shows to you, and the reason I put this in is that as we come up with technologies to help protect content, somebody else is going to come up with a way to kind of ruin that content protection for us. So we need to protect our users. And really, again, I'm beating this to death, and I'm sorry about this, but critical thinking, making sure we're open and aware and as transparent as possible is only going to protect us. If you'll go to the next slide, Diane, I've got a tool that we're going to be sending out to everybody after this. This was written by one of the lawyers on my team, but she, of course, puts a big old disclaimer on here that we're not a law firm, which we're not, but these are the kinds of things that we are recommending that as content creators, these are your best practices to go ahead. And this is a 5-page document. I apologize in advance. But read through this, and this is kind of a bridge to those critical thinking skills as you are creating content, a bit of a roadmap that will allow you to protect and preserve even by capturing prompts, like Dianne said, you should be doing. We should all have a prompt library. But as we create, especially really critical publicly facing information, we should be capturing the prompt that we put in, the result, and then we should continue to refine, and capture each step of the way. Because as someone who has been deposed in an attorney's office in the past for information that has been made public, you have to have a really good audit trail. And this is your roadmap for that. And so Megan's going to send this out to everybody who has joined today, and we welcome that you use it, because it's best practices as much as they exist today. And, you know, again, technology is going to change. The world is going to change. Here we are at the very beginning, folks, and thank you for starting to learn here, and keep that little tin hat on, which is something that I've worn for many, many years around technology. And I think you're going to be in you and your organizations are going to be in a much better place. I think, Dianne, that might be it for me. If you'd click one more time. Yep, we've got it. So in addition, Dianne, you want to wrap it up here and then we can take questions?
Yeah. So we have these, and again, these will be made available to you, this slide deck. And then what I'm going to do is, again, this will be available, but we are going to send this out to you, of course. And I'm going to take the screen share off so we can have a discussion. And while I do that, I wasn't able to put all the links I talked about into the chat because I was managing the PowerPoint. So I'm going to take this off share.
Sorry.
And I'm going to, no, don't be
Thank you
sorry.
for that, Dianne.
No, yeah, no worries. And so we should be off share right now. And I'll go ahead and add some of those links into the chat for everybody as well.
And while you're doing that, I can see, Andrea, you've asked, can a roadmap be made publicly available for others? And is it online somewhere? We have it as an asset up on our website, but we have it behind, most of our assets are not behind a firewall at all. You know, we are making this publicly available to all of you. If you would like to pass it along to your comrades, go for it. We do want to get the word out and make tools as available as possible. On our website as well, we have an operations and issues list that the attorneys have come up with for things that you could take to the leadership of your organizations or your clients' organizations that you can actually provide to them. We also have some drop-in HR policy templates that might help your HR folks to protect your organization as employees are beginning to use these systems. Those are all freely available up on our resources in our website, which is aigovernance.group, and that's how you find it.
Great, thank you so much, Janet and Dianne, for a wonderful presentation. As a reminder to folks, feel free to put any questions you have into the chat. It looks like Colin McCarthy has a quick one. Will there ever be AI technology that is secure enough where you will be able to input confidential and personal info?
Yes, I bet you there will be, because I remember when nobody would recommend anyone use the internet because it was just full of pornography and such. And I remember when teachers would say, you cannot use Wikipedia because you cannot trust what's up there. And today we don't think anything about using the internet. We don't think anything about using Wikipedia as a decent source of truth for some organizations. I think in 15 years, people will laugh at those of us who have come through this point where we've said, be careful what you put in. But at the same time, I also think we need to be, as consumers and just as digital humans, we need to be very careful. For example, I wouldn't speak into one of these chatbots at all. I'm being recorded right now speaking. It only takes 6 seconds of my voice and my face right here to replicate and make me say anything with an AI chatbot, right? So, I'm being a bit facetious when I say I wouldn't speak into my friend Claude or my friend Geppetto at all. What I do say is we need to think carefully every single time we give away something of ourselves in order to get something for free. All right. I think that's really, really critical. And we need to start to really protect the data that we have, because we are the product to these systems. And so protect yourselves as much as you possibly feel like you should. Does that make sense?
Yes, that was great. Another question here, can you talk about what you foresee for federal regulations for AI?
I think federal regulations for AI are years, if not many, many years away. So look at Congress today. And just project yourself into the future. I don't see federal regulations for AI coming until probably 10 years or even longer away. However, the GDPR has created some really interesting regulations, and any organization that does business on a global scale will probably be under the auspices of GDPR. And so they are leading the way. I think California is going to be leading the way. Vermont, believe it or not, I believe it was Vermont, just announced yesterday some very stringent state rules around AI use, and the ability actually for their citizens to be able to sue some of these big technology providers if they find themselves in a place of slanderous or libelous information. So you're going to see a patchwork. It's going to be a while before we get to federal, but there will be laws that smart organizations will follow in the meanwhile.
Someone just brought up in the chat. I'm just trying to see who that was. It was a good point. We're gonna get face to face with Colin McCarthy. Thank you, Colin, for bringing that point up. We're gonna be face to face with a lot of this in the next 6 months with the election coming up. And so we're going to see more and more and more of the elements around this, more concern about the spread of mis and disinformation. We've seen this once already in a national election, so we'll get a chance to be ever vigilant on this point as well.
Time for a couple more questions here, but I'll go ahead and voice one of my own. Copyright has been expressed as a concern with potentially like chatbots and things stealing stuff from other, whether it's text-based, generative AI, or image-based. Can you speak to that a little bit and what maybe some of the concerns are for that?
I'm going to quote one of my attorney friends who said, copyright is going to be fought in the court of law. So as you are creating content, just know that the copyright offices actually have already weighed in and said, it takes a significant human element, human in the loop, folks, HITL, that's a new acronym we're all going to have to get used to. Human in the loop. Copyright AI systems will not in and of themselves, or even with small, easy prompts, be able to be copyrighted. It has to be heavily influenced and guided by or resulting in a lot of human effort. And it'll just, it'll keep going in the courts. The battles will be in the courts, and some of the logos I put up there are, partly working on copyright issues, actually. So great question. And it's just going to be the same as ever. AI is never going to get a copyright by itself, I don't think.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much to you both for a spectacular presentation. I'll hand it back over to Linda, who will get us closed out.
All right. And with that, thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. And we hope to see all you local folks at the hands-on workshop on May 23rd. Bye.